Welcome to my channel. 3 That's all it took for me to speak English without fear and without a teacher. I didn't pay for classes. I didn't have a native speaker friend. I didn't even travel. I was just at home with no one to guide me. But I spoke English, clear, confident, and natural. How did this happen? It was not magic. It was not a special talent. It was a simple plan, small daily habits, and the decision to stop waiting for the perfect time. Today, I will share the exact steps I followed, the mistakes I avoided, and the daily habits that changed my English forever. You will see that you don't need big money, a teacher, or even perfect grammar to start speaking. So, hike. If you want to know the real way to learn, stay with me till the end. Because you can start today, right now, wherever you are. Chapter E. The first realization. No one is coming to teach me. When I first started, I thought I needed a teacher. I imagined a perfect classroom with someone correcting my mistakes, telling me what to do, and guiding me step by step. But the truth was different. I didn't have that. There was no one sitting in front of me. No one waiting to explain grammar rules. No one giving me speaking practice. And one day, I realized something important. No one is coming to teach me. If I wanted to speak English, it was my responsibility. I had to find a way myself. At first, this thought felt heavy. I thought, how can I learn without a teacher? What if I make mistakes? What if I learn the wrong way? But slowly, I started to see the other side. If I didn't have a teacher, I was free. Free to learn at my own speed. Free to choose what I wanted to study. Free to practice the things I needed most. I didn't have to follow someone else's book or schedule. I could build my own plan. I remember a day that made this lesson clear. I was in a shop, and a tourist came in. She asked me in English, "Do you know where the bus station is?" My mind went blank. I knew the words for bus and station, but I couldn't put them together. I froze, just smiled, and pointed outside. After she left, I felt embarrassed. That night, I told myself, this can't happen again. I will speak English, even if I have to learn alone. That was the moment my mindset changed. I stopped waiting for the right time. I stopped waiting for someone to give me permission to speak. I understood that most learners depend too much on teachers. They wait for corrections, for lessons, for someone to tell them what to do. But self-learners grow faster because they practice, make mistakes, and fix those mistakes themselves. And every time they fix something alone, it stays in their memory longer. From that day, I made a promise. I would speak English daily, not when I have time, not when I feel ready, every day. But there was still one problem. How could I speak if I had no one to talk to? That answer came in the next step of my journey, and it completely changed the way I learned. Chapter R. Creating a simple but powerful plan. After that day in the shop, I knew I could not just try to learn English when I felt like it. I needed a real plan, but not a plan for my whole life. Not a plan for some day, I decided to focus only on 3 months. Why 3 months? Because it's short enough to see the end, but long enough to see results. Murray's. When you plan for too long, you get tired before you even start. But when you plan for a short time, you can give it your full energy. I took a notebook and wrote month English plan at the top of the page. Pers. My goal was clear: speak English confidently in daily situations. Not perfect English, not complicated English, just English that works. Then I broke my day into 4 small parts: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Each part would take only a few minutes. No pressure, no big lessons. I wanted something so simple that I could not find an excuse to skip it. For speaking, I decided to practice for just to sheer minutes a day. I didn't have a partner, so I spoke to myself. I described my day, talked about what I saw, and repeated sentences from books or videos. For listening, I gave myself 2 minutes a day. I chose slow and clear English audio. No long movies or difficult news. I wanted something I could understand and repeat. For reading, I set minutes a day. I picked short stories, articles, or even simple dialogues from textbooks. For writing, I started with sentences. A day in my notebook, a short diary entry about what I did, what I liked, or what I planned to do tomorrow. This was my daily action plan, small, simple, but complete. In the first week, I started a tea-day experiment. I picked just sentences that I could use in real life. Sentences like, I like tea. I don't understand. Can you help me? I am learning English. I used these sentences again and again, in speaking, in writing, even in listening when I found them in videos. By the end of the week, these sentences came to my mind automatically. I didn't have to translate them. I remember looking at a big grammar book I had bought earlier. It had hundreds of rules, charts, and exercises. I realized that in 1 week of using real-life sentences, I had spoken more English than in a month of reading that grammar book. That was my big lesson. Real-life English is more powerful than complicated rules. My plan was working because it was simple and consistent. Every day I was building small blocks of English. And just like building a wall, you don't put all the bricks in one day, you add a few each day until it's strong. But even with this plan, I still had one big challenge. And how could I improve my speaking fast if I had no one to practice with? The answer to that question became my secret weapon. And it's what I'll share with you in the next chapter. Chapter 10, My Secret Weapon, Daily Speaking Alone. When I tell people that I learned English by speaking alone, they look surprised. Some even laugh. They say, "How can you speak alone, Tay? Don't you need a partner?" But the truth is, speaking alone became my secret weapon. It gave me something most learners never get: unlimited practice and 0 fear of judgment. Most learners wait for someone to speak with. They wait for a teacher, a friend, or a language partner. But waiting means you practice less. And when you practice less, you improve slowly. Speaking alone means you can start right now wherever you are. No need to wait. No need to feel shy. In the beginning, the first morning I tried, I stood in front of my mirror and said, "Good morning. How are you?" I laughed at myself. It felt silly. But I kept going. I described what I was doing. I am brushing my teeth. I am washing my face. I am making tea. At first, the sentences were short and simple, but over time, they grew longer. I made speaking alone a part of my morning routine. As soon as I woke up, I would spend 5 to 10 minutes talking out loud in English. I talked about my plans for the day. I described the weather. I even pretended to order food or ask for directions, sometimes. I repeated lines from movies or videos. If I heard a sentence I liked, I would pause the video, say it out loud, and try to match the tone and speed. I didn't just read the words, I acted like I was in the conversation. This helped me sound more natural. The best part? I could make as many mistakes as I wanted. No one was there to laugh or correct me. I was free to try again and again until the sentence sounded right. Every day, my mouth and tongue became more used to English sounds. My brain started finding words faster. After a few weeks, I noticed a big change. I could speak without thinking too much. My sentences came more smoothly. I didn't have to translate in my head for every word. Speaking alone was powerful. But it was only half of the picture. I knew that if I wanted to speak even better, I had to train my ears. Because the more English I understood, the more English I could speak. And that's exactly what I started doing next. Chapter Sir. Training my ears with smart listening. Speaking alone was helping me a lot. My mouth was getting used to English words. My brain was finding sentences faster, but I realized something important. Speaking is only half of the conversation. But if you want to talk to people, you also need to understand them. And that means training your ears. In the past, I had tried listening to English movies and news, but it was always the same story. I couldn't understand much. The voices were too fast. The words joined together. I would get tired in a few minutes and stop. That's when I realized it's not that my brain was bad at listening. It's that my listening material was too difficult for my level. So I made a new rule for myself. I would only listen to slow, clear English at the start. No fast movies, no complicated news, no long podcasts with big vocabulary. I wanted short, clear dialogues that I could repeat again and again. I started with conversations from English learning videos. They were usually seconds to e-minute long. Freng. One person would say something, and the other would answer. The sentences were simple, like Bar DL A. Hi, how are you today? B. I'm fine. Thank you, and you? It sounds basic, but this was the perfect starting point. I listened to these short dialogues many times until the words felt natural in my ears. Note, I didn't try to understand every single detail the first time. I let the sound flow into my mind, and with each repeat, my brain picked up more. One of my most powerful techniques was shadowing. Shadowing. This means listening and speaking at the same time. For example, if the audio said, "I'm going to the market," I would try to say it at the exact same time, matching the rhythm and tone. At first it was hard. My mouth couldn't move as fast as the voice. But after a few days, it became smoother. I remember one morning, I was listening to a short dialogue for the 10th time. Suddenly, I heard the phrase, "What's going on?" And I understood it instantly. I didn't have to translate. I didn't have to think. The meaning just appeared in my mind. That was a magical moment. It proved that my ears were learning, even when I didn't notice. The secret was repetition. Once is not enough. If you listen to something even arsers times, the sounds and patterns enter your brain deeply. You start to predict the next word before it comes, and that's when listening becomes easier. I also mixed listening with my speaking practice. Sometimes, I would play a dialogue, listen once, then pause and repeat each line out loud. This way, I was training my ears and my mouth together. In just a few weeks of smart listening, I noticed a big change. When I watched videos or listened to people, I could catch more words. I didn't feel lost all the time. I could understand the main idea, even if I missed some details. And the more I understood, the more confident I felt when speaking. But I wasn't finished yet. Haas. Speaking alone and smart listening were making me stronger, but there was one more step that doubled my progress. It was not about speaking. It was not about listening. It was about training my brain to think differently. And once I learned this, everything became faster. That's what I'm going to share with you in the next chapter. Chapter Wove. Thinking in English, not translating. When I first started speaking English, I had a big problem. I was translating everything in my head. If I wanted to say a sentence, I would first think it in my own language, then try to find the English words. This made me slow. Sometimes, by the time I had the sentence ready, the conversation had already moved on. Translation is like walking through a long hallway just to get to the next room. It works, but it wastes time. And in real conversations, time matters. People speak fast. You can't pause for 10 seconds before you answer. I remember one time when a shopkeeper in a market asked me, "Do you need a bag?" I understood the words, but my brain quickly translated them into my language. Rough, rude. Thought about the answer and then translated my answer back into English. By the time I spoke, it felt awkward and too slow. That was the moment I realized I needed to stop translating and start thinking directly in English. At first, this idea felt impossible. How can you think in a language you don't know well? But I started small. I began with single words. I would look at a cup, and say cup in my head instead of the word in my language. I would see the sun and think sun. Slowly, I moved to short sentences, like, "It is hot today," or "I am tired." I also practiced by asking myself simple questions in English and answering them in English. And, Isindish. For example, I would think, "What am I doing now?" And answer, "I am cooking rice." Or, "What do I want to eat?" And answer, "I want bread." Or, at first, I had to push myself to do this. My brain wanted to go back to my own language, but with time it got easier. Okay. The more I practiced, the faster my brain connected ideas directly to English words. After a few weeks, I noticed something amazing. I could speak faster without planning my sentences. Words came naturally. I felt more confident because I didn't have to translate every single thing. Thinking in English became one of the most important steps in my journey. But there was still something missing. I needed a habit that would bring together speaking, listening, reading, and thinking, a daily exercise that glued all my skills into one. And that's exactly what I discovered next. Chapter Lu. My daily English journal. When I first heard about keeping an English journal, I thought it was only for writers or students with a lot of time. But then I realized I didn't need to write a full page. I could write just 2 or 3 sentences every day. It sounded simple enough, so I decided to try it. My very first journal entry looked like this. Today is sunny. I drink tea. I feel happy. That was all. No long words. No complicated sentences. But I was surprised how good it felt to write it down. It was my English, on paper. Coming from my own thoughts. At the start, I promised myself one rule. I would not focus on perfect grammar. The goal was not to make it perfect. The goal was to make it a habit. If I worried too much about grammar, I knew I would stop writing. So instead, I wrote freely. Sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes I used the wrong tense. But the important thing was that I kept going. Day after day, I opened my notebook and wrote something in English. Soon, something interesting started to happen. Words I had learned before, but often forgot, started coming back to me. When I wrote, "I feel tired today" 3 or 4 times in different entries, the sentence became natural. I didn't need to think about it anymore. Writing every day made my brain remember words better than just reading them in a book. It was like my own sentences were teaching me. Some days, I didn't know what to write, so I made a list of simple prompts that I could always use. Things like, what did I eat today? What did I see outside? How do I feel right now? What is my plan for tomorrow? Call. These small questions were enough to keep me going. Even if I only wrote a few lines, I was still training my brain to think and build sentences in English. Another small trick I used was reading my journal aloud after writing it. This gave me 2 benefits. I practiced writing and speaking at the same time. 1. It also helped me notice if my sentences sounded natural, or if I needed to make them clearer. Some evenings, I would even record myself reading the entries, just to hear my progress later. Laurel. Listening to my own voice. Speaking English gave me a boost of confidence. Over time, my journal became more than just practice. It became a small story of my life in English. I could look back and see not only what I had done each day, but also how my sentences had improved. This made me proud and motivated me to keep going. Lopping Kumpia. Even when I felt lazy, I reminded myself, It only takes 5 minutes to write a few sentences. That 5 minutes could change my English forever. I didn't know it then, but this daily journal was quietly gluing all my skills together. Listening, speaking, and now writing, they were all connected. And in the next chapter, I will share the small but powerful habit that kept me motivated for the full 3 months, even on the days when I wanted to quit. Chapter Chi, staying motivated. Without a teacher. Learning English without a teacher is not just about words, grammar, and practice. It's also about how you feel every single day. Motivation is the fuel that keeps you moving forward, and without it, even the best learning plan can stop. I remember there were many days when I woke up and just didn't feel like practicing. Some mornings, my mind was tired, and I thought, maybe I'll study tomorrow. Other days, I opened my notebook, looked at my English journal, and felt bored before I even started. This is the part that no one talks about, the emotional struggle of learning alone. You are your own teacher, your own coach, and your own cheerleader. If you stop, no one will push you to start again. I had to find small tricks to keep myself going. One of the first things I did was reward myself. If I completed my 15 minutes of English practice, I allowed myself to watch my favorite show, eat my favorite snack, or take a short walk. It sounds simple, but it worked. My brain began to connect English practice with something pleasant. Full. Another trick I used was tracking my progress. I kept a small calendar on my wall, and every day I practiced, I marked it with a bright green tick. Over time, I could see a long chain of green ticks, and I didn't want to break that chain. I also began to imagine my future self, standing in a cafe, ordering in English without fear, or talking to a stranger in a park and feeling confident. I would close my eyes and picture it clearly, hearing my voice speak smoothly and clearly. That image became a powerful reason to keep going, even when I felt tired. Funny kick. But the most powerful motivation came from celebrating small wins. Many learners only celebrate big moments, like passing an exam or finishing a course, but I decided to celebrate every little success. If I understood a sentence in an English movie without subtitles, I smiled and told myself, good job. If I used a new word in conversation, I gave myself a pat on the back. These small wins made me feel like I was improving every day, and that feeling kept me moving forward. There will always be days when motivation feels low. That is normal, but I learned that motivation is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. Even on my weakest days, I tried to do something small in English, like read 2 sentences or listen to a short audio clip. It kept the habit alive. I can tell you now, without these motivation tricks, I might have stopped learning many times, but with them, I stayed on track for months. And in the final chapter, I will share the one rule I followed that made sure I never gave up, no matter how hard things felt. That rule tied everything together and made my self-learning journey a success. Chapter Ba. The rule that changed everything. I want to share with you the rule that completely changed my English learning journey. I call it the never skip twice rule. It's very simple. If you miss one day of practice, you never miss the next. That's it. It may sound small, but it's the reason I didn't quit. Many times when people start learning something, they miss a day, then another, and slowly they stop completely. I didn't want that to happen to me. So I promised myself, if I miss today, I will definitely practice tomorrow. This rule gave me balance. I didn't have to be perfect, but I had to be consistent. At first, I thought one missed day wouldn't matter. But I quickly learned that 2 days in a row was dangerous. It made my motivation weaker, and my brain started to forget what I had learned. So, even on days when I felt tired, I still did something small. Maybe just 5 minutes of listening to English audio. Maybe writing 2 short sentences in my journal. It didn't have to be big, but it had to happen. And every time I kept the rule, I felt proud of myself. By the end of 3 months, the results were clear. I could introduce myself in English without fear. I could have small conversations, asking for directions, ordering food, or talking about my hobbies. I could understand slow, clear English without stress. And all this happened without a teacher, without expensive courses, without special equipment. Just me, my small habits, and my promise to never skip twice. Looking back, I realized this rule worked because it removed guilt. Missing one day didn't make me feel like a failure. It made me more determined to show up the next day. It turned learning into a habit, not a burden. So here is my final reminder to you. You don't need a teacher to start. You need commitment. You need small daily habits. And most importantly, you need to believe that you can do it. English is not learned in one big step. It is learned in hundreds of small steps you take every single day. Start today, keep going tomorrow, and never skip twice. Your future self will thank you. If this journey inspired you, subscribe to my channel so we can keep learning together. Like this video if it gave you useful ideas, and share it with a friend who is learning English too. And tell me in the comments how you practice English every day. Maybe you write, maybe you listen, maybe you speak to yourself. Your story could be the reason someone else decides to start today. Remember, in just 3 months, small daily habits can change everything. Let's keep growing, step by step, and make English a natural part of our lives.